I'm here to pick you up. Let's go home with Daddy. James, who left together with his mistress 9 years ago, cut off all ties with me and our daughter, Barbara. Upon learning something, he reappeared in front of us and approached Barbara. Seeing James, Barbara exclaimed with shocking words. "What? Who's this old man?" James was left speechless by her words, and more was yet to come. "My name is Linda Johnson. I'm a simple housewife who teaches piano lessons. My husband, James, is an elementary school teacher. We met through a mutual friend. I fell head over heels for the sincere and genuine James and confessed my feelings. Having little romantic experience, James was over the moon when I confessed and, from when we started dating, he apparently thought about marrying me. You're the only one who'd marry me, Linda." He'd been saying such exaggerated things since we started dating, and every day he'd propose. Thinking he was probably just sweet-talking, I'd just nod along, thinking marriage was a long way off. "Linda, let's get married." But then, on my 25th birthday, he surprised me with an engagement ring. We had only been dating for about 6 months, and I remember being taken aback when he said it. However, when James sets his mind to something, he sees it through. I was young, and back then, I really wanted to get married, so one thing led to another and I accepted. However, my parents were strongly against our marriage since we hadn't even been together for a year. Both were working abroad, rarely in the US, and were genuinely concerned for me. However, due to James' relentless pursuit, both my father and mother eventually gave in, and by the end of that year, we tied the knot. He's a teacher, known for his sincerity. They probably couldn't find any better reason to oppose other than their own concerns. Since his student days, James had been working diligently, saving enough money for the two of us. He even created a detailed budget, showing my parents how much we'd need for the future. I reckon if I were in my parents' shoes, it'd be hard to keep opposing at that point. "If you're going that far, please make sure to make my daughter happy. She's our most precious treasure, after all." With that said, the parents gave their blessing for the marriage. I thought I was about to embark on a happy married life. However, life wasn't as smooth sailing as I had imagined. After getting married, I realized James was surprisingly sloppy and believed housework was a woman's job. Men should earn money outside and then live freely. He had this old-fashioned baby boomer mentality and never helped with the chores when he was home. "James, please. I've started working too, and it gets busy. Can't you help out a bit around the house? At the very least, take care of your clothes and prepare for tomorrow." Feeling overwhelmed by James leaving everything to me, I brought it up bravely before dinner. James, hearing this, was unexpectedly furious. He lashed out with words I had never heard from him before. "What? You just teach piano lessons and mostly goof off, right? Despite having a job that barely adds to our income, you want me to help with the housework? That's so entitled. Every day, I work hard from early morning, even being asked to advise for after-school clubs that don't pay, and then I come home mentally drained. The housework is your job since you earn less. Don't act all high and mighty when you have it easier." I couldn't believe my ears. He had never spoken to me this way, even when we were dating. His words, so dismissive of me, hurt more than anger me. Every day, I was berated for the most unreasonable things, and when I was at my lowest, I found out I was pregnant. James demanded that I have the baby. "My folks were looking forward to a grandchild. If you don't have it, there will be consequences," he warned. Hearing such a threat, I was at a loss. I had no expectations from James, but I felt this child could be my lifeline. With that hope, I decided to have the baby. But my morning sickness was worse than I expected, and I really didn't feel up to doing housework. My belly was growing, making it hard for me to move around, but James, as always, didn't help out at all around the house. Even when I felt terrible from the morning sickness, he would yell at me, saying, "You could at least go to the convenience store and grab a sandwich, couldn't you?" and wouldn't even shop for me. When I mentioned taking maternity leave from my piano teaching job, he got angry, accusing me of just trying to take time off and blaming how we were going to make ends meet with reduced income. I wondered, can I really raise a child with this man? Such fears crossed my mind, and sure enough, those concerns became a reality. It was a safe delivery, and our daughter Barbara was born into our family. Barbara always smiles, sleeps well, and has truly become the light of my life. Unlike James, she's such a mama's girl, and having her around helps me get through the tough times. I enjoyed every day, cherishing those moments. But something happened to Barbara just before her 5th birthday. She seemed to have a fever. She was lethargic in the morning and had to skip preschool. "Mama, I feel sick." As Barbara lay down, she suddenly complained of nausea and started saying her arms and legs tingled like they were numb. This didn't seem like just a regular cold. I immediately called the hospital, and Barbara had to be taken by ambulance. Fortunately, it was during regular hours, so a specialist was available. Turns out, Barbara had infantile paralysis. Apparently, it was severe, and they diagnosed that she might have lasting effects from it. "What? Doctor, isn't there anything you can do? Can she live a normal life with these after effects?" Hearing the diagnosis alone, I was panicked. I clung to the doctor's arm, crying out, "Please save Barbara!" But there was not much that could be done. There was no specific cure for infantile paralysis, and they told me the only treatment available was symptomatic. I needed to discuss this with James and decide what to do next. I had hoped that at least when it came to Barbara, James would be supportive, but I was too naive. Unexpected words came out of James's mouth. "Barbara's sick. Don't be messing with me. It's probably because you never properly looked after Barbara." James was raging beyond belief, starting to blame me for Barbara contracting polio because of my supposed neglect. At this time in the US, there wasn't a quadrivalent vaccine available yet. The only way to prevent the polio virus was to get vaccinated. To be frank, there wasn't much that could be done if someone caught it. Yet, James kept blaming me entirely, showering me with words that seemed like he was trying to escape responsibility. "What are you gonna do if she ends up with lasting after effects and needs more care? You gonna take full responsibility for her?" James spewed these cruel words without a second thought. Hearing this, something inside me snapped. "Why do you push everything onto me when she's both our child?" "What? Polio's an unstoppable virus, okay? Other than vaccines, there's no effective prevention. Instead of blaming for what's happened, shouldn't we be discussing what to do next? Yet here you are, more concerned with pointing a finger rather than worrying about our daughter. Don't you feel any responsibility as a father?" I had never once complained about James since Barbara was born. I always kept silent out of fear that Barbara might get hurt if I didn't. But I had reached my breaking point. I feared that if I kept it in any longer, I might do something regrettable. Especially now that Barbara wasn't around, it was crucial to confront James. I thought so, and directly shared my feelings with him, but his response was something I never expected. "When did you think you could talk back to me like that?" James gave me a look of disdain, colder than anything I'd ever seen from him. Seeing that expression, a chill ran down my spine. "I didn't raise you to be a defiant wife. You should have just listened and obeyed me. I don't need you anymore. Get out." With that, James started to drive me out of our home. Confused by the sudden turn of events, I banged on the door repeatedly from the outside, pleading for him to let me back in. But there was no response from James, and the midwinter air pierced my skin. Why did this happen? Tears overflowed from the sheer pain, and that day, I ended up returning to the hospital barefooted. I left my cell phone and wallet at home. The nurse who saw me turned pale and immediately tended to me. Warm blankets, a drink, and the kind words of the nurses. Tears streamed down my eyes as I felt the warmth of people around me. The nurses contacted my mother and explained the situation. "Linda." My mother, who was in the UK for work, decided to come home right away. She took over dealing with James, seeing that I was mentally exhausted. "Leave him to me. You just focus on Barbara. Right now, she's the one fighting the hardest. Pull yourself together." She revived my soul, and it woke me up. I'm not the only one who's hurting. Barbara is still fighting to overcome the virus. Holding on to Barbara's hand as she struggled, she squeezed back, albeit weakly. "I'm gonna fight on." Even without words, it felt like Barbara was telling me that. It made me realize I can't give up either. However, due to Barbara's severe polio, she had paralysis affecting her left lower half. She can move, but not freely at her own will. It's almost like she's numb. But her fever subsided, and she could talk properly. Barbara smiled as if to say she was okay. "Who cares about one left leg? This is nothing. Thanks to you for bringing me to the hospital so soon. Heck, I'll even undergo rehab to make this leg move more." So, Mom, please don't blame yourself anymore because of me? Barbara, now regaining her strength, seemed to have realized everything. There were times when I secretly left the room to cry, and I constantly blamed myself thinking, "It's all my fault." I was comforted as if she could see right through me. "Hey, Mom. Where's Dad? He hasn't visited once. Is he busy?" The moment Barbara mentioned her father, my heart sank. "Barbara, can you listen calmly?" I hesitated to tell the recovering Barbara the truth. However, I didn't want to hide anything from her. If she has to face a painful reality someday, I might as well tell her now. Gathering my thoughts, I told Barbara the painful truth. A divorce? Turns out, James had left Barbara and me to run off with his lover. When my mother went to James' house, everything was gone, except for my belongings. The only thing left on the table was a letter written about a divorce, and there was no trace of him other than that. When my mother tried calling James on the cell she'd given me, he coldly said, "Why would I care for a sick kid? I'm done with you. It's over between us." And with that, he hung up. Later on, when my mother visited his parents' house, they told her about James' current situation. Apparently, James had been seeing another woman for a while, and she got pregnant. Thinking of remarrying her out of responsibility. His parents apologized over and over, saying, "We're truly sorry for our foolish son." My mother talked to me about this, suggesting, "If you want to go to mediation and ask for child support, I'm all in." James' parents also agreed on this. However, I didn't want that. While I can't deny that I'm boiling with anger about everything, my mind is preoccupied with Barbara. I don't have the time to deal with such a deadbeat guy. I conveyed my thoughts to my mother, who, though frustrated, respected my decision. So, Dad cheated. Upon hearing the story, Barbara wasn't shocked. Instead, she thoughtfully uttered the word cheated. Thinking I might have upset her, I hurriedly looked into her face, and out of nowhere, she showed a chillingly bright smile. "In that case, Mom, I have a favor to ask." I was completely taken aback, feeling both scared and surprised by the situation. Listening to Barbara's words, she shared something shocking. 9 years later, Barbara entered 8th grade. She made a remarkable recovery and, after graduating from a special education school, started attending a public middle school. I opened my piano studio on my own. Now, I make a living out of it. Since then, we've faced countless challenges, but Barbara has been resilient, and I often find myself leaning on her for support. Just as I thought our smooth sailing days would continue, I spotted a stranger standing in front of our house. That day, Barbara and I were out shopping, and she was right beside me when I noticed the man. Wondering who he could be, we approached him, only to recognize him, and both of us wore expressions of shock. "I'm here to pick you up. Let's go home with Dad." To our surprise, it was James, the man who had abandoned us all those years ago, waiting for our return. Why was James at our home? More importantly, how dare he show up now after all this time? My anger and hatred surged instantly. Ignoring my evident discomfort, James tried to approach Barbara. "Don't you dare get close to her. Who do you think you are, acting like you're her dad now? What happened to your affair? Aren't you happy with your new family? Don't touch her with those filthy hands." Although Barbara has recovered, her left leg doesn't fully move. If James were to grab her now, she wouldn't be able to get away. Determined to protect her, I stood in front of James, not hesitating to confront him with biting words. "I don't need you. I came to see my daughter. Get out of my way." As he tried to forcibly move me aside, Barbara pulled my hand and, with a bright smile, delivered a shocking statement to James. Who's this guy? A friend of yours, Mom? He looks dirty and creepy. I wish he'd leave our house right now." "Huh?" Stunned by Barbara's words, James was left speechless. "It seems like you're referring to me as your daughter, but my only parent is my mom. I was told my dad passed away when I was young. I don't know you." Though I never told Barbara that her father had died, I quickly realized she was improvising on the spot. I was amazed by her quick thinking. Barbara didn't stop there. "Is it okay if I call the cops on this stranger? Or should I yell, 'Hey, someone, help. This weird guy's trying to kidnap me'?" Barbara didn't hesitate to raise her voice right in the middle of the street. Seeing this, James panicked and tried to silence her, but I firmly stood my ground. Hearing the commotion, our neighbors came out to see what was happening. "Are you okay, Barbara? Are you really some kind of creep? If you lay a hand on our Barbara, you're gonna regret it." "No, you've got it all wrong. I'm her father." "You're my father? Don't make me laugh." Upon hearing the claim of being her father, Barbara's cheerful expression vanished, and she glared coldly at James. "I don't have a father, and the only reason you're trying to contact me now is probably because of money, right? Ever since I became a singer-songwriter and started earning?" Hearing her words, James was taken aback and seemed lost for words. After that incident, Barbara asked me if she could start taking piano lessons. "Dad always told me to focus on my studies and not waste time on things like games, TV, or other hobbies. I should only study hard," he'd say. I later discovered that James had been pushing Barbara to excel academically, always trying to make her the best. Because of this, Barbara would secretly write letters to her friends and refrain from visiting them to avoid getting caught. "If your mom finds out, she'll spoil you. So, let's keep this a secret just between the two of us." I remember him saying that. Looking back, it's so creepy. It's not right for a real parent to take away a child's freedom. I finally understood when I saw Barbara laughing mockingly. She hated her father more than I did for robbing her of her life. That's why she said those words to me back then. "I love the way our mom plays the piano. When I grow up, I want to have a job related to the piano too. I'm gonna show everyone how wonderful the piano is." At the time, I didn't really get what she was talking about, but now I realized she was determined to prove James, who always mocked the piano, wrong. I realized for the first time that her words back then were filled with such ambition. Barbara was born with perfect pitch and had an extraordinary memory. Once she heard or saw something, she could remember it like a machine. Not only did she quickly memorize sheet music, but her piano skills also improved incredibly fast. On her own accord, she started voice training. Unsatisfied with just the piano, she began exploring various other instruments. On her days off, she'd perform with a guitar in front of the local train station and applied to numerous talent agency auditions. She used her challenges to her advantage, turning them into positive attributes. Because of her beautiful voice and the talent she exhibited at the young age of 14, she started getting offers from TV shows. Now, she tours all across the US as a singer-songwriter. "You must be kidding. I came here purely to see you. Then why did you abandon us back then?" As the crowd began to gather around us, I loudly recounted all of James' misdeeds for everyone to hear. "When Barbara got sick, you abandoned us because your mistress was pregnant, didn't you? When things didn't go your way, you'd shout and throw things around. Haven't you always been the worst kind of person? And now you come here claiming to be a father? Give me a break. Barbara and I have long since erased the memory of ever having a father." Hearing these shocking revelations, the neighbors were disgusted with James, and they stood by me. This is the town where I, Linda, grew up, a place known for its strong sense of community and loyalty. Everyone here has treated Barbara as if she was their own child, helping raise her. To them, it felt like their child was being insulted. The crowd began shouting insults at James. "I don't have a father. Why would I ever go back to a scumbag like you? I'm gonna live my life with my mom and friends. Never come back here, you womanizing piece of trash." With that, Barbara threw her bag and jacket to the ground, signaling for the crowd to chase James away. The neighbors shouted at James to get away from Barbara as he desperately clung to my feet. Linda! Please, help me! I admit I was wrong. From now on, I'll cherish you and Barbara. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Please, I'm begging you, forgive me." James was on his knees, begging and rubbing his forehead against the ground. But looking at him, I felt nothing but disgust. After everything he'd done, this man believed that a simple apology would absolve him. I wanted to show him that life isn't that easy, so I bent down, put on a wide smile, and motioned for him to lift his head. "Look up, James. Linda. Please forgive me. Think I'd get back with a guy like you? Not in a million years. Please never mention mine or Barbara's name again. If you ever show up here again, I'll report you to the police as a stalker." James, thinking he'd be forgiven, looked up only to be met with my eerily cheerful smile, leaving him speechless. He seemed to realize the end was near, standing on the brink of despair. And with that, James walked away from us in a daze. The neighbors were relieved that nothing bad happened to Barbara and me. Some of them, aware of our painful past, even shed tears of sympathy. "We'll be here for Barbara from now on, as her dad or big brother or whatever." "You're a bit too old to be called a big brother, ain't ya?" "You got that right." Everyone laughed it off in a cheerful mood, and before we knew it, the atmosphere lightened, and Barbara's smile returned. Apparently, the reason James visited us that day was because Barbara was featured on a TV music show and he happened to see me there. He was able to find our house since our home also functioned as a classroom. A bit of digging easily revealed our location. Word has it, his current wife is quite the spendthrift, and his paycheck alone couldn't keep them afloat, so he came crying to us for help. Some folks just never change. Guess it's good we tossed him out when we did, Mom? Maybe I should write a new song titled Trash and vent about all our past grievances. Jokingly said, my daughter. As scary as it was hearing those words from her, seeing Barbara enjoy life despite our hardships made me feel a bit glorious.